Alright, can you guys see what's going on? Try to keep my melon out of the way if I can. Oh, I'll kick you in the leg. Right. Now, I had to modify one of these bolts when I changed a lot of the drive components because this sprocket is just slightly larger than the factory one, and so I needed to be able to get a chain to clear that. So this one goes in the back. And for now that doesn't matter, but I'm going to do it that same way anyway, just because I don't want to risk any other problems. Now this motor, the frame is a little bit different on it. The nuts will actually spin on the back side of it, whereas the other motor, I couldn't spin it, it would jam against the housing. So this is supposed to be the same displacement, but we shall see if I get it all going and then go out and turn circles in the yard. I'm not trying to go straight, and I'm not going to be very happy. But like I said, it's supposed to be the same displacement, so 14.09 cubic inch per revolution. Come on, tighten up. Go. Okay. Did you guys see what was going on? I have no idea whether you could see anything or not. I was thinking I might not bother to tighten up this back one, but it looks like I probably better because there's just a slight, it's cocked out just slightly, so I'm going to have to go ahead and cinch it out. Now this is pretty visible. Remember that sprocket, or that bolt that I told you I modified? Yeah. Well, this is it right here. It barely clears the sprocket. I needed the room to clear the chain as well because the chain sticks out quite a bit from the sprocket. So I had to modify it. However, thankfully, this motor has enough room to get box in wrench on the nut and turn it, so this makes life a whole lot easier. This thing's taking a lot more turns than I thought it would. I wonder what's going on here. Pretty sure my nut and or bolt are not stripped out, but there we go. These are sticking out quite a bit. I'm glad I tightened that. Tighten the bolt. I have no idea what you guys can see other than my back probably, but I guess we'll see when it comes time to edit the video. I would stick you down inside here so you could see, but it's really greasy and I don't want to goober up the camera. Okay, so we've got a motor. Sorry for shaking you, probably giving you a headache. So we got the motor in there. You can see the new sprocket. Well, nothing's bolted up, so the thought is that I can probably, I need to pry bar. Slide this, yeah, there we go. As long as it stays on there, see? Now, we got it slid out there. I'll take my paint pen and just go, can you see very well? I'm gonna stick that flashlight in there. Yeah, that helps you. It kind of washes it out, but I don't have a screened flashlight, so you're gonna have to just live with that. Okay, so we'll get them marked. Well, there's a little bit of movement in there, but that I think we can live with that. That pillow block is pretty forgiving in the way of how much space we got there. So, all right, excuse the bump. All right, can you see that? I got basically a circle right there, or really close to a circle, enough that I can figure out where I need to find what I need to do to find the center. So I'm going to do my best to find the absolute center, and then I'm going to drill a hole, and then I'll get a hole saw tomorrow after work, and we'll blaze it through, and we'll get that. I guess I need to figure out how long my jack shaft or my stub shaft needs to be. Well, I'm going to figure that out. Okay, so in my infinite wisdom, I did not measure how far that shaft goes or is inside that sprocket. So this is probably going to be a little bit difficult. I got to think about it for a minute, but I'm thinking if I just go from the edge of the sprocket to the wall and then add some, once I figure out how much, okay. Alright, so I'll get the tape down in there. Edge of the sprocket is basically, it's pretty much right on 1 inch. Okay, and then our pillow block is 1.5 inches, basically. So we're gonna, so that's 2.5 inches plus whatever's inside that sprocket, plus the thickness of this metal, which I think is 1/8. Yep. So we're at 1/8. Sorry for putting my head in the way. So we're looking at 1, 2.5. So we're looking at, let's see, that'll be, I protrude it 1/2, 2, so you're looking at 3 inches plus whatever's in there. So remember that, 3 inches plus whatever's in there. Let's get that motor back out. Okay, the motor's out, back on the bench. Really? Right at 1 inch? So we're looking at 4 inches total. And that'll give us some protrusion. Alright, so that's what we're going to go with. We're going to cut that shaft at 4 inches. And then I need 1.25 inch hole saw. And then we'll get let's see. Ah, jeez. Sorry about that. The camera's backwards, so I think we ought to be okay with the. Maybe I'll go with 1.5 inches. Thinking that maybe 1.5 inches will probably do it better. That'll give us a little bit more forgiveness. So what I'm planning to do is get the motor bolted in, get my stub shaft cut and fit, and then slide this on the outside, and then I can mark my holes and drill them out, stick my bolts in. Bob's your uncle. Guess that's it. Okay, so that turned out way harder than I had hoped it would be, but there's at least really daggum close to the center, so I'm gonna go ahead and roll with that. We're gonna grab my center punch and give it a schmuck and blaze a small hole through it, and then I'm gonna, I don't know if we'll get the motors put back on tonight and check it or not, but we'll see. I don't want to drill too big of a hole though for the pilot, so I might just hit it with the center punch and then call it a night. That's probably what I'll do. I'll pick this up back up tomorrow after work. You guys, it'll be seamless for you guys. So I almost forgot to talk about the my thought process in doing this. I did talk about the lateral thrust and how I think that's what was causing the damage, my repeated sprocket failure. I also didn't realize that I had put a spacer on the old motor. It was like a, I don't know, 3/8 thickness spacer to space that sprocket out, thinking I would need it away from the frame. But I got to looking at it, and I don't think the one that's still alive, the motor that's been living so long, the right-hand drive, I don't think it's got a spacer in it. And there's plenty of length in that chain, or run in that chain, that it can work, at a slight angle. It's fairly forgiving. Those chains are new. I replaced them well, they're not new now. That was close to 10 years ago now, but they were new, and they still 60s have a fair amount of play in them, so you can be forgiven of an alignment issue when you have that long of a run. So that one doesn't have a spacer. At least I don't think it does. I'm not going to tear it apart to check, because like I said, it's been holding up for this long. I'm going to leave it alone until it does break, and then I'm going to have to probably do the same thing I'm doing to this one. What I was going to do, or what I was thinking about doing, was taking the motor, just putting a single sprocket on it, and then running down and putting a jack shaft in there and doing 3 sprockets on it. So one to drive off the motor from the motor to the jack shaft. There would be 1 sprocket there, and then 1 each for front and rear axle. The problem I was running into was not so much the width in there. The bigger issue was height. How was I going to get the motor in there and the sprocket, and then get a jack shaft in there and have the right alignment to where I would basically have to put that jack shaft down really low in the belly, where it would be dragging and all the crap, because these bellies fill up with crap. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. dirt, grease, oil, it's just a big mess, and that chain's going to be dragging through it all the time. So I don't anticipate that the pillow blocks would last super long. It would also wear out your chains faster. It would wear out your sprockets. There's a number of issues. On top of that, I couldn't figure out how I was going to get the right elevation so that the front and rear axle chains would actually clear the it would mainly just probably just be it would be the front axle chain, because I was going to put the jack shaft behind the motor, because the motor is closer to the front on the left side. The motors are offset, so the right side sits back farther than the left. And I guess that's for space, but in all reality, they could have brought them a lot closer. You've got quite a bit of room in there. But anyway, I'll lose my train of thought here. Oh, the alignment was going to be an issue, so what I thought I was going to end up having to do is run an idler sprocket to get that front chain underneath the motor sprocket and chain and get it out to the front. And I really didn't want to do that because the way that this is set up, I'm not sure if I could actually just do an idler or if I would have had to add a second jack shaft. So then it would have gotten even more crowded in there. So this, I'm going to try this. I think it'll work, especially since I took that spacer out. But we're going to see, I guess. I don't run these chains super tight. I like to have them a little bit loose just to kind of forgive that that leverage, that lateral thrust leverage on the motor. At least that's the hope. I don't, like I said, I'm not a mechanical engineer, so I don't really know. A lot of this is trial and error, and I've errored quite a few times on this left side drive. Hopefully this will be the last time for a long time. I do like this motor that I've got, so when I get it in there, and we'll see how it holds up, and if it holds up, I'll probably go ahead and order another one and replace that back one and do this whole same thing. But when I do that, I'm going to have the shock done, and then I'm going to do I'll do that other side. I'm going to change out the motor, or the engine rather. It's got a Briggs 18 horse opposed. I got a Briggs Vanguard V-twin that's going to go in its place. That'll give me a little bit more torque. It's not quite as, it's not as smooth at idle, but when you're running full throttle, it's not that big of a deal. Also, there are a number of hydraulic leaks in the belly. I'm going to, the control valve itself for the loader leaks pretty bad out the spools, and it's not really something that you can rebuild. I haven't been able to find any parts. On top of that, it's only a 2-spool valve, and I really want third function hydraulics because I've got this skid steer came with the forks, I don't know if it's a 32-inch bucket and a 38-inch bucket, or a 36 and a 40-inch bucket. And I use the 40 pretty much, the wider one. I use it pretty much all the time. So what I want to do is take the narrow one and build a hydraulic grapple and use it for Alright, we're going to have to edit that. What I want to do is build a hydraulic grapple for the small bucket, because the small bucket is intended so you could flip your wheels around. You can have the skid steer narrower, and you can go through like I think it's a 36-inch gate. So it's under 36 inches. So maybe it's a 34-inch bucket, I don't recall. I haven't used it since I bought the machine. That's not true. I used it once when I lived in another town, had a different house. I used it once squeezing through a gate, but just flopping those wheels around, the thing is super, super squirrely. And here, I built this house, I'm building everything around it. I'm going to put 40-inch gates in everything. Or bigger, you know, so I won't have the issue. I won't have that issue. So really the only thing that I'll want that bucket for is I want to put a grapple on it, and then I can use it to, I get single grind mulch from the city. It's not super cheap. I mean, it's not cheap, it's just way cheaper than any other option, so that's what I go with. And I get that, and then I go and I put it on all my tree rings. And it would be really nice to be able to use the skid steer instead of lifting the bucket or the bed up of the dump truck and shoveling or pitchforking it into the skid steer and then going and dump it. Just to be able to scoop off the back of the dump truck, grab it, go and dump it. And you know, the stuff, it rots fairly quickly, so I mean, it's building the soil, so I'm not super upset about it. But you know, at least, at the very least, every 2 years I'll be adding mulch to all of my trees. If not every year, so it's worth building the grapple to do that. Also, you know, I can grab things, you know, I grab a hold of a wad of hay at some point or something like that. Also, I have my fork, the pallet forks for this, and I have that electric log grapple that I made. I've got a video of it on my channel. Go ahead and check it out. I want to do away with that and build a curved hydraulic log grapple so I can securely grab the log. And this works. It's slow, but it does work. But I want something better, so I'm going to make a curved one that'll really grab the log. And I may even just not use the forks at all and build a whole new log grapple. I get dedicated log grapple with a couple of curved spikes and then the curved grapple to grab a hold of it securely. Because I use this machine as of now. I pick logs out of the pile and then I set them on I've got a tall stump, and I set them on the stump, and then I'll cut off the ends all the way down to the width of the bucket. And I cut my firewood like that. It makes it a lot faster and you're not bending down. I'm cutting it basically at waist height, so it's a lot faster and I can go a lot longer without fatigue. The steering is pretty sloppy, it's a long way from accurate, and it's not the linkage. I've gone through and I've checked all the linkage, so what I think it is there's actually inside this machine has 2 hydrostatic motors, pumps, one for each side, and there's a shaft that goes in there that runs the swash plate, and there's a roll pin that attaches that shaft to the swash plate, or to the fork for the swash plate. And I guess those are known for kind of wearing out. So there's also, I think the input seals are leaking on the motors, so I need to pull those motors out, tear them apart, replace those roll pins and the seals, and then I'll put a 3-function hydraulic valve on this, and I'll run auxiliary hydraulics out. And it's not going to run full-size machines, or full-size skid steer machines like a trencher or anything like that. That's not what I intend. It's mainly for grapples. That's really what I want it for. And I got to replace the valve anyway, so I might as well do it. Hydraulic hoses won't be super expensive, and so I'm just going to go ahead and do it, put it on there, and then I'll be happy with it. This machine's obviously not going anywhere. I thought maybe I'd replace it with a bigger one, and I had a line on one and it didn't work out. So I'm going to be running this thing for indefinitely, basically. And hopefully someday I'll get a bigger machine, but I doubt I'll part with this one too. So also, what I need to do is replace these tires. These tires were bad when I bought the machine over 10 years ago, and I think I'm actually going to get a little bit wider wheel, because I think 3 of the 4 have a bunch of holes wallered out in them, and they're 6-on-6 lugs, and there's only three lug studs on the hub. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit wider wheel, and then I can get a 10-inch wide. It's basically a skid steer tire, but they're not super expensive. They're less than $100 a piece. So I'll get those, and that'll give me better traction, better flotation, you know, it'll handle better. And then I'm going to drill these out so I have a full six lugs on there, and that'll make it more stable and stronger. And then I'm going to ballast the tires. And I will not use, I don't use calcium chloride because it's so corrosive. I'll just, as I change oil and things, and I will keep a jug of clean waste oil, and that's what I'll put in there. It's just waste oil. And, you know, it's not nearly as heavy as cal chloride, but it doesn't eat everything either. So basically it'll last forever inside a tube. And that's what I'll run, are tubes. It won't be tubeless. So put tubes in it, fill them up, and that'll help me pick up a little bit more weight. It's rated for 700 pounds. It can do just slightly more than that. I think if I ballast that back wheel, I can get it right around 800 pounds. It won't curl it, but it will pick it up. And that'll be enough. I mean, 800 pounds should be enough for this little machine.